Good morning and afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for our presentation on planning for a post-pandemic economic upturn. Excuse me. My name is Patrick DiFiore, and as many of you know, I'm the agency partner manager for GTM Payroll Services. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started here. If you have any questions, you can submit them to the chat box below in the webinar console. We'll get to as many as we can at the end, and if we don't answer your question, just stay tuned because I'll follow up with you. Also, you will receive an email shortly after the webinar with a link to download the slides. There are other resources, including our special guide for preparing your agency for the economic upturn, link in the view of the recording of the presentation. Just a quick note about GTM before we get started. We provide comprehensive payroll, tax, insurance, compliance, and employee benefit services to families who have hired a nanny, housekeeper, senior caregiver, or any other household employee. We've been doing this for almost 30 years now and serve thousands of families across the country. We are the only household payroll company and tax service that offers workers' compensation in-house, which makes it truly a one-stop shop for your clients. Workers' comp is required for household employers in many states across the country. GTM can also provide families with several options for additional benefits for their employees, including health insurance, virtual medicine, retirement 401k plans, tax savings accounts for healthcare options such as the QSERA that many of us are familiar with. And creating ecstatic clients is one of our core values, which is reflected in the client reviews that we receive and something we put quite a bit of emphasis on. Our speaker today is Sheridan, the Senior Director of Marketing and Business Development for GTM. She has led our marketing efforts here for the past 5 years and also oversees our sales and partnership management teams. With GTM, Chris has cultivated enhanced customer service interactions through digital channels including mobile, online, and email, created and customized client experience for our agency referrals, and developed the company's positioning and messaging in the household employment industry. She is a graduate of Colgate University and Syracuse's University Whitman School of Management. Chris also knows a thing or two about weathering economic downturns, having led through past economic recessions. I'm going to turn it over to Chris, and she's going to lead the rest of the presentation. Chris, are you with us?
Sorry. Thanks, Patrick, and welcome, everyone. There is not anything you can do about the current situation today for your agency. You're not going to be able to create demand where there isn't any, but there is a ray of sunshine ahead. We're going to get through this, and we're going to return to a new normal. Things will not look exactly like they did before the virus struck. We are starting to see businesses beginning to phase workers back to the office. And with that will return the need for childcare. Social distancing will likely continue for some time until the world has a vaccine. Families may not return to daycare centers at the same rate because of health safety issues. Some families will choose in-home childcare over exposure to multiple people in order to limit their risk. A new normal can also mean new opportunities. One-to-one care will be an important piece of childcare. Hiring an au pair will be less of an option due to uncertainty with travel and health concerns. Backup care will also be looked at by more companies as a resource for their employees. New partnerships can be made with hospitals and other organizations. And paying your nanny legally has never been more at the forefront, as the pandemic has taught us how not doing so leaves nannies without benefits and risks fines on the family. There's also going to be some pent-up demand from new moms who put off hiring a nanny. You're going to want to comfort these moms and walk them through the process to feel safe about hiring in-home. So all of this really does point to some rays of sunshine as the economy begins to open back up. Now, there is much about this pandemic and economic situation which is out of our control. And I know for me that feeling of having no control is a very stressful one. But there is one thing you do have control over. You can control how prepared your agency is for when demand picks up, and we truly believe it will. So while your business may be down now, the best thing you can do is determine your strategy for when times are better, and use this time to create your plan so you can act when the time is right. Knowing when to act is essential. And the timing may be different based on where you are located in the country. So most of what I'm going to share today is really a framework for thinking about what you should do for your agency. You know, there's not one right answer, as each of you are in different markets. You have just slightly different businesses across the country. But one thing, if you don't change anything, that's probably a mistake, as the world has changed. So before we get into some of the things you can do now, I'd just like to poll the audience. So if we can put the poll up, and you can use your cursor to select your answer on the screen. And if you look at comparing May to April, which of the following has your agency experienced? Are you seeing an increase in demand for your services? No change yet? Or a further decrease in demand for your services? And when we think we've got some responses in, we can go ahead and put up the answer for the audience. So some good news here. So we're seeing about half of you are saying you're starting to see some increase in demand in May, so which is really good. And I think for those who are seeing no change or less, I don't think you should be discouraged. It's probably a timing issue, and it's going to be relevant to where you are in the country. So good to hear that half of you are starting to see some of that increase. So one thing you want to consider is agency staffing. So if your agency now is a one-person operation, this does not apply to you. But if you have or had staff members for your agency, you need to determine when you should bring back staff and the best way to do this. One factor is demand. So what volume of inquiries and placements do you need to be at that requires you to staff back up? How much capacity can you handle on your own? Do you have an on-call service, and are you going to need backup for this? Also, stay in touch with your agency staffers. Are they going to be available when you are ready to have them back, or will they have taken other work? Close communication is key. It keeps you engaged with your staff. Does your key staff have childcare issues of their own? You know, how are you going to address this? Do you need to keep them remote? That is certainly one option. Now, if some of your staff has moved on, then you're going to have a longer time to hire and train someone to replace them. And identifying potential candidates now is prudent. Monitor and track your inquiries that you're getting, the phone calls, the emails, the chats during this time, and watch for when you're starting to see that volume increase. And you should already have an idea of the conversion rate of your inquiries. And what I mean by this is, how many people typically contact your agency and then end up placing with you back in the normal days? That's a good benchmark to look at. That will give you some metrics to follow to know when you need to expand your team. Another factor is if you applied and received a paycheck protection loan for your agency, you've probably been paying your staff. So rather than deciding on when to bring them back to work, focus on what they can do now to assist before demand picks up. And if you have a physical office, you need to be thinking about the office environment and how it needs to change to adapt to CDC guidelines. Do you need to move desks apart? Have you acquired face masks for your staff? What's your new cleaning protocol? And we do have a great handout in the webinar console that outlines what you should be considering with a back to the office plan. And if you're watching demand, you're going to have an idea when things are starting to pick up, which may require you to find more candidates. You should also be in touch, and I know many of you are, with your current pool of candidates and temp nannies. Check in with them frequently, provide resources to help them if they're not working, and GTM has some great information you can share with nannies on unemployment and benefits if you need some help with that. Also assess how are they feeling about getting back to work in someone's home. Share with them what that new normal may look like, with required temperature screenings and questions about any health symptoms they may have, possibly requiring longer commitments for temp jobs so there's not a rotating person every day. And continue to share the CDC guidelines with your candidates and staff. And most important, be transparent what you as an agency are doing. You can reach out individually and also schedule a Zoom meetup to share and engage with candidates in your temp pool. This is a great way to keep that face-to-face contact, and it makes the staff feel really good about the connection. And you can use this time to talk about how they can improve their resume, for example, or discuss upcoming jobs. The goal is to understand who's available to work, keep them engaged with your agency, and know when you will need to recruit for more candidates. And I think there's two scenarios with recruitment that could happen. You may have difficulties if people are receiving unemployment and they're not interested in returning to work yet. Another scenario that could happen is there is a new influx of people looking to do childcare who aren't working, don't have unemployment, or are looking to switch from a job they perceive as more risky. And your challenge will be wading through these to find the best candidates who are in it for the right reasons. Recent college graduates may have a difficult time finding work, and it may be a possible source of quality candidates. College students more than ever may be looking for summer work as internships and other jobs have dried up. So this slide is about whether you need to pivot your business and change your focus. Look at your current services you provide today, and what ones should you promote? Are there new angles to how you promote your services? For example, families are struggling with homeschooling while trying to work from home. Can you add tutoring to the list of services to provide? Families may want to continue this through the summer, knowing that children have been shortchanged with learning this year. Virtual tutoring also may be a new trend. Does it make sense to add virtual nanny services as well? Options to give working parents at home a break is key. Remember, they're feeling very overwhelmed and frustrated. Personal assistance services for shopping and errands is another service to promote. Even with the economy opening up, seniors are still highly vulnerable and still want to avoid trips to the market. Families that will welcome a nanny back into their home may want to limit exposure and not have their house cleaning service come back. So could the nanny pick up additional hours, maybe in the evening or over the weekend, to clean, for example, for that family? Senior care may not be part of your services or maybe a very small portion of what you do. There may be an even greater need for in-home senior care, as families will not want to put their loved ones in a nursing home during this pandemic, or are pulling their loved ones out of nursing homes. Also, look at who your target audience is. Do you want to attract families who may have been daycare people in the past? Should you market to the HR directors of area businesses, hospitals, and healthcare organizations who are bringing employees back into the office, and their employees don't have summer camps or daycares open and may need your services more than ever? So what's important is that you do go through the exercise of asking these strategic questions, because it's not business as usual. Now, you may decide that nothing needs to change for your agency, which is fine, as long as you just carefully thought it through. Right now is a good time to be thinking about whether or not your pricing model needs to change. There's a couple of factors at play here. Some people seeking a nanny may have come off an economic crisis of their own, with job furloughs, reduced wages, a spouse who may have lost a job, so they will be cost conscious. You may decide that this group is not your target audience, or you may look at a temporary fee reduction or reduced services for this group. Payment terms is another area for you to consider. When are you asking for the fee? Is it broken up into several payments over time or upfront? And you yourself may value the money upfront more than ever, and you could offer an incentive to reduce the placement fee if it's paid in one upfront payment. Another factor is that during the new normal, COVID-19 is going to still be around, so some families might balk at paying at a high placement fee in case they lose the placement when the nanny potentially becomes ill with COVID-19, or perhaps the family becomes ill. Could you offer a replacement nanny guarantee for 6 months? For your temp service or your backup care, do you need to change any rates or terms? Would you increase the hours commitment for temp care, for example? The point for this exercise is that how you were doing business before the pandemic doesn't mean you have to continue to do so during the new normal. Evaluate what makes sense for your agency and your region. I also want to caution you against just lowering your fee structure. That isn't always the answer to gaining more business. If your market was always high net worth individuals, then lowering price may only lower your profits. High net worth individuals weather economic downturns very well, and for them, it's just a matter of comfort with having someone back in their home than it is about the cost. If your market was more of a 2 middle income earners, then they may have more issues related to the downturn and be more impacted by this. So look at your guarantee periods. This could be adjusted to help families feel more secure with making the jump to hire. You all know the advantages of in-home childcare: less illness for children, less missed work days for the family, that individualized attention, control over the routine and what children eat, having a stable caregiver versus an ever-changing staff, and a schedule that really works for the family. There's now another big plus to having a nanny versus using daycare centers. It limits that exposure to potential infection of the virus by having only one person exposed to your family versus many that would be in the daycare environment. So now is the time to add to the content you have on this or create new content for families. Another area to look at is what has worked for you in the past for generating new clients. I would first look at what have you invested money in for your marketing efforts. That may be Google ads for your agency. Are you able to track how many clients came from those efforts? What was your spend and what did it yield? You may have costs associated with maintaining your website and hosting your website. You can't really abandon your website, so those are probably things you've got to continue. You most likely receive referrals from existing clients, in a sense, word of mouth. And those efforts probably have no money attached to them, but you may want to look at your efforts to generate those referrals by staying in touch with your current families and past placements, and your backup care families who may turn to full-time placements. Did you attend any events in the past? What did those yield? For social media, have you been spending on anything like boosted posts for Facebook? Do you know if that had made a difference? So here, the purpose of this is to really understand what has yielded results in the past and at what cost. For example, if you spent $1,000 on Google ads and got 2 permanent placements for a total of $8,000, this worked, and it may be something you want to turn back on when the economy starts to reopen. There have been many studies that show that businesses who continue to advertise during a downturn come out of it stronger than those that don't. You may not be able to continue to spend on advertising, but you can utilize free channels to make sure your agency doesn't fade away so that you are top of mind when demand for your services increases. Keep your website updated with new information. Have content ready for the new normal. Continue to focus on social media like Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram. Reach out to your local business chambers. They may have resource pages for members looking for childcare, and you want to be on those lists. Also, your county may also have resource pages for childcare as well. Tap into your internal list of contacts. Families who've used your services in the past, those that contacted you but didn't use your agency, and also your nanny candidates. Share helpful information during this time. Keep them informed about what you are doing, that you're still open. Talk about other services that may see increased demand right now, like homeschooling help, and share positive messages as well. I know a New England nanny that's here in the Albany Capital District area. The agency director, Melissa Schoonmaker, she shared photos of herself driving around to hand out masks to the agency's nannies. So those are some of the things that you can do to keep that presence going. Another good idea is to do weekly spotlights to showcase some of your caregivers. You can monitor and participate in moms groups and Facebook groups related to childcare in your area. Another thing you might want to do is reach out to local media, your local news stations and newspapers, and offer your expertise up on safe practices to have a nanny in your home, for example. You can offer yourself as an expert to talk about childcare options for the summer. And this is a story that the media may be interested in covering, as many homes are faced with the challenge of, how do I go back to work when there's no school, there's no camp, and there's no daycare open? These are just a few ideas of the kind of content you can focus on now. The point is to be relevant to the time we are in and what is on the minds of families. You may also want to think about content for businesses, especially if you have a backup care program. And as always, you're welcome to use any of GTM's content on our site, and feel free to reach out for us for help. Now, when demand picks up, you want to be ready to help families figure out this new normal. And that means helping families with hiring protocol. You and the family will want to do initial phone screens and video interviews to narrow down top candidates. And then also look at your screening questions. Are there new ones you want to add? Families can put in their work agreements that they will provide a safe and hazard-free workplace, that they're going to do everything they can to minimize employees' exposure to COVID-19. The agreement can say that they will include taking measures such as asking employees daily if they feel ill, if they've had any COVID-19 symptoms, if they've been exposed to anyone who tested positive, and if they've recently traveled anywhere that may have exposed them to the virus. So talk this through with your families. Also make them aware of the FFCRA and that it applies to families with household help. The agreement can say it will comply with the FFCRA entitlements, as well as the state, local leave laws in the event an employee cannot come to work due to a qualifying reason. Job descriptions should have a section on cleanliness expectations, sanitizing duties, and behavioral items such as respiratory etiquette while the nanny is on the job. And talk these things through with your nannies so that they understand what families may be requiring. Health and safety is on the minds of both. Now, since your business is slow, you may have some time to focus on learning some new skills or best practices that will help out your agency. And I want to add a caveat to the slide. You know, you can only do so much, and you have your own personal issues to deal with. Like, you might also be struggling with homeschooling and working from home and no childcare. So if you don't find time for skill improvement, don't sweat it. I know at the start of the pandemic, I kept feeling guilty about all this media I kept seeing about people, you know, learning a new language and taking up yoga and baking. And I didn't really have time for that, and I've learned to ignore that now. So a couple of areas to think about, though, if you do have time. One is, you know, looking at, if you're using Google AdWords, maybe you manage that campaign yourself, this might be a good time to dig into your data. Take some free tutorials to learn more about managing your account. Google has a lot of free resources to help you with that. Same thing applies to social media platforms. Many of them also have free information and webinars that you can use to get better at using their tools. Do some research on how to best ask for referrals and review your own process. this is a great thing to network with other agencies on how they're doing it and see if there's some best practices you can learn from that. And of course, be a support to your clients. Let them know you are here for them, and they may need extra guidance and more of your time. So be patient with them. Now, if your agency had a mix of families who paid legally and some who did not, the opportunity to be 100% legal pay has never been greater. First, nannies that you place, I think, are going to be asking for legal pay. Never before has it been clearer to household workers the importance of legal pay. Without it, nannies were left out of unemployment benefits, they were left out of the FFCRA and stimulus checks if they weren't filing tax returns. I grew up with Depression-era parents, and that definitely left scars on my parents. So frugality was a whole lifetime commitment for them, having gone through the Depression. And I think COVID-19 will affect us all and caregivers for years to come as we go forward. So nannies are going to want to be protected. It's also going to be easier to convince families that paying on the books is the way to go. The possibility of having your nanny go on leave or be laid off is real, and the risk of being called out for noncompliance is very great when a nanny is let go and they file for unemployment. So both sides, the nanny and the family, will have strong reasons to pay legally. So review what you are providing families and nannies on this topic. GTM, we've got some great co-branded information that really addresses the benefits of legal pay for both sides. And also, look at when you introduce the topic. We found that when paying legally is addressed early on in the hiring process and before that commitment to a rate of pay, it is much easier for the family to accommodate. So this presentation was really meant to give you some things to think about in preparing for a different future, and also some good news about the opportunities for your agency. Some of these things I'm sure you've already thought of and you're working on. Hopefully you got one idea from today to put into action. So this wraps up my suggestions for things you can work on now to be ready for better days ahead. And I also want to leave you with remembering that you only have so much control over things, and give yourself a break. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Patrick, and we'll also have an opportunity to take some questions.
Alrighty, Chris, thank you so much. Very insightful presentation. A lot of really great information packed in there. And again, as you've mentioned numerous times, we can only do as much as we can. Obviously, we want to take this time to better ourselves, but you got to do it within your own means. So moving forward, obviously, GTM partners with many nanny agencies across the country, many of which are in attendance right now. But for those of you who don't partner with us, I'd like to just share some quick benefits about building a relationship with GTM. So first off, we're actually the only payroll and tax service that provides workers' compensation insurance to families, and we have the most comprehensive additional benefits to offer high net worth clients and even dual working families. We see the talk of health insurance and contributing towards those premium costs to be more prominent than ever before, which is great for our industry and obviously the nannies that we all work with. Other than that, our concierge service levels are priced lower than a lot of other full service household and payroll tax companies. Our services are very reasonably priced and manageable for families even during the economic change here. And then unlike some other household and payroll tax services, we don't help families find nannies. We are strictly payroll and taxes, compliance, benefits, and helping, but we do not staff nannies ourselves. So your clients can rest easy because of our data security and best practices as well. We're held to the highest within the industry because of the families that we deal with and, of course, our internal practices and procedures. And then lastly, we offer customized agency pages with specific state information on our website to welcome your families and help them with content for your website and just bringing them generalized overview of what their next steps would be in terms of payroll and tax information. And last but not least, our agency partner referral bonuses are competitive, and we have a dedicated agency team here, myself and then my colleague Matt Owen, as many of you know. He's our household employment expert. We both work with you guys and your families to serve everybody's needs as best as possible and, of course, make sure that they're all in compliance. So with that being said, we'll jump here hopefully, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to leave them in the questions window. And then this next slide, we just wanted to give you a general sense of the expertise that GTM can provide to your clients. So not only payroll and tax, but human resources, insurance, benefits like health insurance for your agency. And I'll be your point of contact, but we have a team here of professionals who can also assist. And before Chris takes some questions, I also want to offer that I'm happy to help out your agency in any way. So whether or not you're a referring partner, we can still offer trainings to your staff or nannies. I actually just did one over the course of the last weekend with Charlotte's Best. We had a really great turnout that was directed right towards nannies and helping them with the compliance side of things and any questions that they have related to, of course, our pandemic situation that we're in. And if you need information for your website as well, we've been cranking out a bunch of new materials, of course, with all the changes that are going on. So please don't hesitate to reach out. And then just one last reminder, we have some really great resources in the handout screen on your webinar tab there, which you can download. They'll also be emailed out to you later on in the day today with the recording of this webinar as well. So again, thank you all for being in attendance. We're going to take some questions now. So if you guys have any remaining, please don't hesitate to leave them in the chat box. But Chris, I'm going to jump right in here, and I'm going to present this question to you, especially because your expertise in marketing. So someone asked, how can we, or what do you feel are the best social channels for promoting our agency and our marketing efforts?
Sure. So I would say Facebook and Instagram for sure. I think in terms of the age demographic and gender, both of those are good places to get in front of your audience. I feel Twitter a little less so. I think Twitter, it doesn't take a lot of effort to put some tweets out there, but it's not, I think, is easily seen. People who are on Twitter, they might be getting hundreds of tweets a day, and they're not necessarily reading all of those. So I would say Facebook and Instagram. And then also I would look at LinkedIn as well. So given that your clientele are most likely going to be two income earners, they're highly likely to be on LinkedIn. So that's also a good place to provide some content as well.
Yep, I completely agree. And as you had mentioned previously, there's a lot of Facebook groups out there that are dedicated towards either childcare or moms groups, nannies in particular. So those are really great groups to get involved with. And then,
yeah, you can even start a group, and if there's not one in your area, and start that group up.
Exactly. Yeah. Take the reins here. Okay, Chris. So this next question here it's kind of a two-parter. I'm going to lump two into one here. So the first part is, how can we determine if our candidate pool will come back to work? And then secondly, what are your tips on screening candidates now that we are seeing an overwhelming increase in the applicants?
All right, so the first part of that one is like, how do we know, trying to assess whether or not when we're ready that they're going to be there and wanting to work. So I think I would definitely encourage you to be in communication with them regularly. You can certainly have one-on-one discussions and kind of ask that question. You could also, put out a survey through email or text link. There's a lot of real free survey tools out there. We use SurveyMonkey. There's a lot of them out there, and they all have free accounts, and you can quickly, create maybe a 3-question survey just to assess what they're feeling, which is asking that question. Do you feel comfortable coming back to work? Are you ready to come back to work? And what you may want to do is make sure you do it anonymously so that they're more likely to give you the truth rather than them having to identify themselves. And at least it gives you some idea percentage-wise of your group what they're feeling right now. I think the second part of that question was about how do you go through and screen applications if in fact you might see an influx of lots of applications, and in case that scenario plays out. I think, going to the application questions itself, and I'm sure you're probably already asking a question like, why is it you want to be a nanny? You might want to look at, if that isn't something that's right up front in the initial written application that they have to put in, is to add that. Nothing like having to provide a written response kind of deters people from even continuing to follow through if they weren't really all that serious about it as a career. So, and then I think, using the usual things, using what kind of years of experience they have and what previous types of positions might help you weed out the people who are looking to make a short-term career change for maybe the wrong reasons.
Yeah, exactly. With obviously a lot of people being out of work, I think there'll be an overwhelming amount of candidates who are in it more for the income as opposed to the career, which I know all of our agency
Right.
partners look for career and dedicated nannies, not somebody just looking for a job. So I completely agree with you and some really great points there. And again, if anybody has any other questions, feel free to leave them in the questions box here or email them to myself directly. But we are well past the half-an-hour mark at this point. So, Chris, I do thank you very much for speaking today. You had a lot of really great points, and I thank you everyone for being in attendance. Had a really great turnout. And again, keep an eye out for the email with the recording as well as some links and PDFs. But again, do not hesitate to reach out to myself with any questions or needs that you guys have. I'm here to help.
Yes, and thank you everyone who attended. We wish the best for you and hope you have a good Memorial Day weekend. And remember that the better times are coming.
They certainly are. Hopefully everybody's got good weather like we do here in New York. And again, thanks all for being on the call today. And we will be in touch and we'll talk to you soon.